Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Josh Epstein. I'm the marketing specialist here at TDA Perks. Today's webinar is Practice Lease Renewal versus Relocation. We're going to learn the advantages and disadvantages of lease renewal versus practice relocation. Today's presenter is Patrick Valence, who is the longtime Perks vendor, Excite Realty. Patrick Valence has over 20 years of combined experience in the healthcare and real estate industries. He's successfully negotiated lease and sales transactions throughout Texas for hundreds of healthcare clients. His experience includes representing general and specialty dentists, veterinary hospitals, freestanding emergency departments, urgent care centers, optometry and ophthalmology, specialists, physical therapy and rehabilitation practices, as well as plastic surgeons and medical imaging providers. Before we begin, I want to mention that TDA Perks endorses over 20 vendors, all designed to help you with your practice, from OSHA and HIPAA compliance to marketing, dental supplies, insurance, and financial services. We also have a resource section on our website, tdaperks.com, with several archived educational webinars and articles. So we're going to hold questions till the end, and then Patrick should have plenty of time to answer them all. Patrick, thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. Let's give a quick introduction of Excite Realty. You know, we were founded in 2013, and we are a healthcare specific real estate brokerage firm, meaning all of our clients, or 99% of our clients, are healthcare related. We don't represent any owners or developers. We specifically specialize in representing tenants and the users of real estate. We did that, you know, so it eliminated any conflicts of interest. We wouldn't have interest in bringing you to one site over the other. So we wanted to play on an equal playing field and really align ourselves with the user of real estate. We have 4 offices in Texas, 1 in Florida, but however, we've operated in 23 different states around the country. So we have the bandwidth, and really our approach is data-driven approach, allows us to do that. With technology of today, we're able to find the demographics and everything we need via the computer, and then represent our doctors with whatever location they're going into. So that being said, you know, I wanted to cover some things in the webinar. Really, the main points are you're going to be in a real estate play throughout your career, whether you're starting up, renewing a lease, relocating. As long as you own a practice, you're going to have a owner-occupied expense. And what I want to do is, with covering these points, is how to position yourself to create leverage and save money by properly planning. And the first thing is really understanding your current lease. There'll be some critical dates in there that we need to understand to help position yourself, and I'll cover those on a later slide. We also want to do a practice analysis, and that will help us determine if we're going to do a renewal or a relocation. We'll discuss factors of renewal, factors of relocation, and timelines and costs associated with all of these. You know, understanding the lease, right? So the first 2 are pretty simple. When does your lease expire, and what are your required notices? So typically in a lease, there's always a term, a beginning and an end, right? We negotiate that up front with the landlord, and then there's also notice periods required. So if you plan on leaving a lease, you typically have to give a 6-month notice or a 9-month notice, and those are important to understand. And a lot of this is what we're going to talk about. You're going to hear me say a captive tenant a lot, but that's what we don't want to be. And I'll get into a little bit more, but if you wait until typically those notice requirements are, you're inside that date, and you lose leverage, because if you're in a 6-month notice period, the landlords know you can't effectively go and renegotiate or negotiate on a new deal, build a practice, and move in within that time. So you really lose all your leverage. So we'll hit on those points a little bit later. Understanding your holdover provision. This is what happens when you have not negotiated a renewal at the end of your initial term and you go into a period to where you're staying on a month to month, well, typically you'll see that you will be penalized 150 to 200% once we get into that timeline. So it's important, again, to be prepared ahead of time and don't fall into that holdover period where it penalizes you. Stay ahead of these dates. It helps us generate leverage, like I said earlier. Another thing to understand is the personal guarantee and how it applies to your plan. Typically, when doctors are starting a new practice, the landlords and developers, if they're giving a lot of tenant improvement allowance, they'll require a personal guarantee. But if you're going into the phase of renewing and there's not much capital improvement that's going to be required and asked of the landlord, we really need to try to limit that. So understand what your guarantee says. If you have one, understand it. And then if you're going into a renewal or something like that, then we need to be able to limit that as much as we can. And then always, this is another thing, and we talk about this more and more. We actually negotiate this up front for all of our clients, is the exit strategy. What's your plan? And then sometimes you don't know your plan, but what we always want to do is, if you sell your practice, have the ability to assign it to the purchaser, because the last thing that you want to do is sell your practice and still be liable if the new owner defaults on that lease. So, renewal or relocation? Sorry, the analysis of your practice. Where is your current patient base coming from? Has this shifted over the course of your ownership? Has the community dynamics in the area that your practice is changed? And what's the competitive landscape? I'm going to cover those four first. Really just tell a story. One of my first clients that I ever worked with, we went to his practice. His practice was doing fine as far as production and as far as how it looked inside. But the one thing that he kept saying was, I'm not getting any new patients. I'm doing a good job retaining my patients, but I'm not getting any new patients. And I took a look around. Everything was nice. He had a technology. He had a CEREC machine at the time. This was 20 years ago, and so he was ahead of the game there. And I said, well, are you doing fee for service or Medicaid? And he was like, well, I'm doing fee for service. And I said, well, that doesn't match, what's going on around the surrounding area. It's going downhill, it's lower income area. And so we did what we called as a scattergram. And that scattergram we took is all of his current patients. We wanted to see where they were coming from. And after we did that, we took a look at it and we saw that they were driving in town, but they were all coming from an area where he lived, where he went to church, where he was active in the community and some of those things. All of them, they were driving in as they were probably commuting to work, stopping at his practice, and then going to work or hitting them on the way home. So what we decided to do, instead of doing a renewal, is we did a relocation, and we moved him closer to his community. And so when you analyze your practice, you got to look at that. You got to look at, I see, also practices that don't have anywhere to expand, but they have 2 to 3 month waiting time, so it can become a detriment that your location is not big enough, or your location become a hurdle because of it gets old. Everything gets old, it gets run down. Maybe the landlord's not taking care of the property like it should be. You have leaks in the roof. I've seen it to where people have cracks in the foundation and the landlord is not fixing it right. So we got to look at all of those factors when we're trying to renew or decide on a relocation. Lease renewal, plan ahead and start early. Lease renewals, going back to those trigger dates, I'll see, those trigger dates that are 6 months out, and the doctors are busy in their practice, and they don't realize that their lease is coming up, and they get a phone call from the landlord representatives that represents the building and has the building's best interest, and say, hey, now it's time to renew your lease. Well, you're within that 6 months of your final, of your initial term. You don't have any leverage at that time, because, and this is when you become a captive tenant. they know that you can't leave and build out a new practice in that amount of time. So if you try to lower your rental rate, they're going to say no. If you try to get some tenant improvement, they're going to say no. Try to get some free rent, anything, likely they're going to have very little flexibility. But if you start 18 months in advance and get engaged with the landlord, then you have some flexibility and leverage. I would look at the market, understand the market, see what rental rates are at buildings that are similar to yours. I'd even call the new developments, because I've seen deals where a new development wants medical. And to be honest, after the pandemic, I'm having people call me and say, hey, I want more medical in my buildings because they did really well during this pandemic. The restaurants and some of the traditional retail did not do as well. So we're getting really good deals for some of our medical clients because they're more attractive today than they were 12 to 18 months ago. They're already attractive, but now even more so. And I'm seeing sometimes where people will buy doctors out of their remainder lease, give them big TIs, they really incentivize them to come to their center. So it's good to know what's out there, and you could use that as leverage to get things from the landlord. Also take a look at your HVAC, cosmetics. Typically the HVAC, depending on what kind of building you're in, is the tenant's responsibility. And if you're having problems with it, let's look at it, and now's the time to address that with your landlord. Get tenant improvement dollars to fix that, or sometimes I'll see they get free rent in lieu of tenant improvement dollars. And take a look at your personal guarantee. If you're renewing in a building and you're not asking for a lot of tenant improvement allowances, then it's time to limit that personal guarantee as much as you can. If it didn't burn off on the initial term or come down to some limited capacity, then we need to look at that and renegotiate this. Do you have the ability to expand? Even if there's a tenant next door to you. I represented another doctor here in town that he was having long wait times for new patients to get in the door. And he said, I really have to move, but I don't want to. I've only been here 10 years. I've taken really good care of my practice, but I've grown. I can't get new patients in the door fast enough because there's a wait time, and then they end up going somewhere else where they could get in. Well, we went to the landlord, and we didn't know there's a dry cleaners next to him. But we didn't know that they were wanting to shrink their footprint a little bit because it was a really big dry cleaner operation. But we were able to take 900 square feet from that dry cleaner and put 2 more operatories in him, which gave him more options to get patients in the door. So even if there's somebody directly next to you, always ask the landlord if there's an opportunity and the adjacent tenants around you, because somebody may be willing to give up some space. Understand the market, I said that earlier, but always make sure you do your due diligence and research. And then at the end, have the ability to assign. If you did not do this in the first lease, on your renewal, put it in there. You don't know if you're going to end up selling in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, but you need to negotiate that, get it in there. If you have the ability to assign the lease, you don't ever want the landlord to hold up a sale because they're not assigning the lease. And believe me, doing these practice sales for some of our clients, the bottleneck is always getting the lease assigned if it wasn't negotiated on the front end. So if renewal doesn't make sense for you and you want to do a relocation, then this is where it really gets tricky. What do you want to do? You need to have a plan. Do we purchase an existing building and renovate it? Do we purchase land and build ground up? Do I want to be a single tenant where I occupy the whole premises? Or do I want to build a building that I occupy half of it and we lease out space next door? Or do we lease? I could probably talk about this forever, but what we need to do is 1, figure out what area you want to go in, and 2, what is available. My advice is to always get the best piece of real estate, whether it's lease, purchase. I've seen some people make mistakes that they wanted to own so bad that they took a bad location, and then when they sell the practice, people want to buy the practice. They don't want the real estate, and they end up relocating it. And then we built out something that's a specialty office that's going to be hard to lease, especially if the demographics changes over 20 years that you've been there. So let's look at something, let's evaluate it, let's get the best piece of real estate that if we do need to relocate, that this specific piece of real estate can be reused as something else and not a dental office. But evaluate what we're trying to do. Where can we go? Can we go somewhere that we can retain our current patients, but also capture more patients? So is there a busier intersection or better visibility or access to a neighborhood? And again, always keep your exit in mind. Like I said, I've seen some people buy some bad real estate and not be able to sell their practice because of where it is. So always keep that in mind. You know, if we're going to purchase an existing building, that means buy a building and renovate it. And in today's market, actually, this is probably not a bad idea because the cost of construction materials and lumber and steel. So you could probably save a lot of money on this, but we need to start 12 to 18 months in advance. There's a lot of different critical discipline that goes into this as far as architectural design and getting permits and figure out what do you want to do, a competitive bid versus a design build. There's contractors that do both and understanding what they are. You know, a design build is a contractor that the architect works for, and they design it and they build it. Competitively bid would be where you go out and you hire an architect, you have them draw the plans, you competitively bid each trade that's going out there. You could save some money going that route, but it also takes a lot more time. So typically the timeline is what dictates what approach we use on this and really the ground up. But this is something good to look at and make sure that, you know, you could buy an old building and put a veneer on it to make it look like a new building. I've seen some really nice projects done that way, and then they build a dental office inside. Always keep in mind the exit strategy here. You become a landlord and a doctor at this time. You have two separate entities, and the value of the building at this point will become the value is based on the net operating income. So you pay rent to your dental practice, pays rent to your real estate entity, and then the value of that building is based on a cap rate and what your net operating income is. So you can make profit right away off of it, sell it to an investor. Does the building that you build, is it attractive to investment community? And is it a desirable location for the buyer? So there's two plays that you can do there. Sell it to the investment community with a medical tenant, long-time medical tenant in it. You could hold it for yourself and your family as part of your retirement plan. Or we got to look at, is the location desirable for a buyer of that practice? Building new. There is a lot of moving parts that goes in this. If you're wanting to go this route, plan at a minimum 24 months in advance. We need to figure out if you want to be 100% owner occupied or if you'll have, you know, additional space to lease. Again, in this approach, there's a lot of critical trades that have to take place, right? And we have to find a piece of land. And I'll just share with you some difficulties that I've had with some clients. And it's very common in buying land. So we're typically not a big user, right? So we have to find land that they could divide up. And typically the developers will want to push the medical tenants to the backside of the property, and we want typically the most desirable part. So they've got to figure out what part of the land they're willing to sell us. And sometimes that takes time because we have to wait until all those puzzle pieces fall into place. And then once we get there, you know, we get it under contract, we get into feasibility, we need to do a site investigation analysis, civil engineering survey, phase 1 environmental, and site planning. So we could figure out, yeah, hey, can we build the building that we want on this? What's the square footage of the building? You know, what are the tension? Is it regionally detained, meaning drainage, or do I have to build something on site, which get very costly? zoning, what other type of tenants we could put in the building. So there's a lot of different things that go on in this part of it. And then you have permitting, and it goes on. And so we've got to get that done before you even break ground. And just make sure you do your due diligence. I've seen some, and actually this is a true story. It was a medical type of use in our ERs, and there's some restrictions that, and it wasn't one of our clients, but they just went out and bought a piece of land real fast. And they didn't realize that they couldn't put their specific use there because there's underground gas pipeline running within 300 feet of that property. So they bought the land, they had already closed on it, because they didn't do a site investigation analysis. We had the same deal that I saw in San Antonio for a vet clinic that was trying to go in, and they ended up getting there, but they had to get what they call as a special purpose permit to go in there. So be aware when you're buying land, there's a lot of hitting factors in there. Make sure that you use professionals that will do their due diligence and do their homework and not let you close on something that you can't put a practice on. And then also the mistake that I see a lot of people make is they buy a piece of land and they build a building, and here they're like, I want some additional tenants in the building, so I'm going to occupy half of it and then lease out the other space. And then when it comes down to it, no one ever told them about all the soft costs that are associated with leasing space out. So this would be your broker's fees, your legal fees, and your tenant improvement allowance. When you go lease a space, there's always a tenant improvement allowance for new tenants, $30, $40, and it could be, if you take, $30 times 3,000 square feet, that's $90,000, and that's what the market's giving out, and you're trying to attract new tenants to the space, and no one wants to go there because you didn't plan for that $90,000. And so what I've seen them do is they give away free rent or half rent for a period of time. And again, I talked about it a little bit earlier. The value of this new construction is going to be based off the net operating income of your tenants, so the rental income that you get. So plan, do your due diligence, put together a budget. All of this can be done while you're in the feasibility period, and you could look at it and say, is this a smart investment for me, or am I going to be sitting here a long time with not another tenant in the building? Do your due diligence, do your homework, start early, and again, always keep your exit in mind. Do I plan on holding this building for a long-term hold? Do I plan on refinancing and taking the equity out of it? Do I plan on selling it? So know that up front. You can plan like a developer and know the value that you're going to get before you commit to buying the property. And then lease again. And this goes back to what I said about the best real estate. Get the best thing for your practice, the best property, the best location. How is this real estate going to make my practice attractive to a buyer when I sell out? And I say this too, is right, if you're making a lot of money, you could always go invest in real estate and build a building somewhere. And so let's take the best location for my practice that I could build it and make it as most profitable as I can, and then sell the practice, invest in real estate, do whatever. But again, here in Texas and most big markets and around the country, we're seeing a very competitive landscape for dentists leasing space. If you want to be in a grocery anchored center, you need to plan probably before you even see the sticks and bricks going up. If you see the sticks and bricks, I know in Houston and Dallas and Austin, you're late. If it's a prime location, we're doing deals for our clients, 12 months before they're delivering the building. So 12 to 18 months, maybe even 2 years. If you're going to move and lease, find that location. A lot of deals are getting done just in the planning phase of it, when they just have renderings of that building. So stay in front of that game, understand that it's a competitive landscape for dentists, and the earlier you are to the building, sometimes we could get a better deal because they may need to get 50% financing before they kick off construction, and to get that done, they'll give us a little bit better deals if we're ahead of the game. So construction costs and timeline, understand that. Landlords concessions in today's market, we're seeing really good deals for dentists by way of rent, tenant improvement, owner occupant or beneficial occupancy period. So we have 6 months to build it out where it's no cost to you. We're seeing a lot of good concessions in today's market. Again, keep your exit strategy in mind. And this is where I said, if we do lease again and we're relocating, keep in mind that to negotiate your exit on the assignment and assignment of that lease when you sell the practice. Oops. To sum it up, understand your lease, determine what you want to do well in advance, plan ahead, plan early, be proactive. I see a lot of doctors leave money on the table just because they're reacting rather than planning ahead. What are your needs? Make sure that they're addressed in your current lease. Make sure that your needs are addressed if you decide to purchase, build, or lease. Again, just understand the timelines, be ahead of everything. It can save you a lot of money, and then keep your exit in mind. So with that, thank you guys, and I'll open it up with questions.
Patrick, thanks a lot. Really appreciate you always doing these for us and being here with us. I've got a few questions here that hopefully you can answer. The first one is, how long before my lease is up do I need to start the process?
So, how long before your lease is up? It depends on what you want to do, but at the very latest, create a plan, start looking at it at 24 months out, figure out what you want to do, and then, start the real estate process 18 months in advance. Whether you're renewing or relocating, because like I said, if you engage the landlord 18 months out, even though you're renewing, they know that you have the ability to move. If you wait till it gets in within that 9 to 6 month window to start negotiating, you become that captive tenant. And captive tenants, you become reactionary, and the landlords aren't going to bend, and they'll wait till the last minute and sometimes push you into holdover. And what they'll do is on that notice period, if you don't give them notification that you are definitely renewing, then what they'll do is they'll take it out to the market and they'll blast it out and say, hey, I've got a second generation dental office here. And of course, people are going to jump on that because you have no build out cost. And then they come back and they say, well, we have this deal at $5 above market that somebody's willing to pay. You either need to pay that or get out. So start early, 18 months in advance.
Okay, and actually this kind of segues into that. So if I got a late start and my lease renewal is fairly soon, what are my options?
Your options would be to see if you really don't know what you want to do and you haven't begun the practice analysis situation, I'd go and see if you could do a short-term lease, a 1-year lease, something like that, while you're trying to figure it out. And typically your rule of thumb on your renewals are typically around 5 years, or a shorter term than if you go in new, simply because it does give you some flexibility. But if you don't know, the landlords should be willing to give you a 1-year renewal while you figure that out.
Great. Looks like we have one more question here. Again, ladies and gentlemen, we've got plenty of time. So if you do have questions, further questions, you can type them in the question box on your panel, and we have plenty of time here. So the next question I've got is, what's the first thing I can do to prepare for negotiations?
The first thing that you could do is start early and engage your landlord, right? So if you're doing a renewal, the most important thing is to engage. Let them know that you're looking. Create that leverage, and then their response is going to be, oh, it's too early, let's wait, and you need to push on them to say, no, I need to plan now. So don't let them push it off. Be proactive with them, engage, or hire a real estate professional to handle that for you.
Okay, and let's see, got a little bit more time, ladies and gentlemen. So again, Patrick, we really appreciate you being with us and all the information that you provide. Ladies and gentlemen, you can, contact me, Josh Epstein, over at TDA Perks. My number here is 512-443-3675, extension 161. And I can always connect you with anyone over at Excite, Patrick for sure. Hey, Patrick, one of the things that I basically, so Excite is endorsed for a few different products. And, one of the things that I think is real interesting, and I'm glad we're doing it, is that turnkey practice management, the whole solution. And it's really a cool product. And some of the things that are handled are this is something that they can do for you. It's a whole turnkey product, that handles the planning and budgeting and lending. It handles legal and architect and design and construction management, vendor selection, coordination, equipment, move-in, and then even marketing, websites, and even email. So, I love that product. And, ladies and gentlemen, again, we've got Excite endorsed for a few different things here, and they've been with us, for several years, 7 years now, and we really appreciate them. So I don't see any more questions. Patrick, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, thank you. Thank you for having us. We enjoy being a part of the TDA. So anything that you guys need and your members need, feel free to reach out to us on the project management side of it too. Happy to talk more onto that and all the things that we could help coordinate on the ground up construction and things like that. But certainly a pleasure to do these and hope to talk to you guys soon.
Excellent. Thanks again, Patrick. Take care,
Okay.
everyone. Have a great weekend. Be safe.
Yes, sir.